Brown.
We're good? All right. Okay. 6:30 p.m. February 13th, 2025. I'll call the meeting of the Charlottesville Police Civilian Oversight Board to order. We will begin with something new I'm going to do, which is simply to read some quick points of interest for everybody who's here. We treat other attendees here with courtesy, listen actively, avoid interruptions, and refrain from personal attacks or inflammatory language. There is a public comment period at the end, so we ask that you wait for the designated time on the agenda to provide your comments. If there's a time limit, you'll be advised of that, and we ask that you adhere to those time limits. When you speak, if you choose to do so, please make sure that you clearly state your name and the organization affiliation you have, whether you're a resident of Charlottesville or Albemarle County. Focus your comments on the agenda item that has been discussed, and please pay attention to any instructions that I may give or follow any established procedures for raising concerns or asking questions. We'll begin with the roll call of members present. Mr. Dillard. Here. Mr. Frazier. Present. Ms. McBride is excused absent. Mr. Mendez. Here. I'm here. Mr. Pullum. Ms. Washington.
Here.
The executive director, Ms. Gonzalez, I believe, is here online.
Here.
Yep, and then Mr. Walker, also online.
I'm here.
Okay. We're going to go to announcements first. Mr. Mendez and I understand that the General Assembly has put into committee a proposed law or bill regarding the automated license plate readers. Yes. Because Charlottesville has begun to use those in a capacity that we have reviewed and had input with the police department, Mr. Mendez and I are drafting a letter to the General Assembly. Essentially, that talks about the history of ALPRs, how it came into play here, how the Charlottesville Police Department is using that, and some of the general concerns that we still have in terms of general usage and how ALPRs can be abused if they don't have specific ordinances in place to govern their use. We are, after communication with Mr. Sanders, we're sending that out.
Just as a note.
Okay.
It passed the House. Now we have to lobby the Senate.
Okay. So be it. Things move fast in Richmond. We are sending that out as private citizens, not as not representing the board's position on this. If you would like to sign on, please let us know a copy of the draft. I think we anticipate sending that out probably within a week. So just let either Bill or myself know, and we'll get a draft to you. A couple of items that are coming up that I wanted to mention. The closest one is on March 20th. Abundant Life is having their Abundant Madness, which is their March Madness. That's going to be on Thursday, March 20th from 12 to 10 at Cardinal Hall. You can park at the Cardinal Hall at Dairy Market. And also on April 26th, which is a Saturday from 12 to 4, Abundant Life Ministries is having the 4th Annual Community Festival. That'll be on Prospect Avenue in Charlottesville. As chair, one of the things that I wanted to do was to, as these things happen, make the announcements and see if at least one member of the board can go to these events. I recently went to the one, which is the police chief's community meeting over at Carver. It was well attended. I had an opportunity to speak with a number of people there, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to go out, let people know who we are and what we do. So we'll continue to make those announcements every month as they come up.
No question for you before you go forward. On the 20th, on the March 20th, what time?
The one on March 20th is from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Well,
So noon to 10 p.m. Yep.
all right. So what about the one on
The one on the 26th.
26th of April?
Yep, that's from 12 noon to 4 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Moving forward, we'll move to the approval of the agenda as written and published.
So move.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Passed unanimous. Next, approval of the minutes from January 2025. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Any opposed? Minutes approved. I'll now turn this over to Mr. Walker, who will run us through the management analyst report.
Sure, and I'm going to share my screen. Share on this one. So just to continue with this practice, under the minutes, you can see I've attached the monthly report for January. I can hear myself feedback in the room. Are you able to mute the room? There we go. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to keep attaching that monthly report that goes with those same minutes each month. So January minutes will have the January monthly report. Just trying to do a little bit of a new style for 2025. And just our cover page here, just a quick statement about the Police Civilian Oversight Board and what we do and what this report is for. Looking at January oversight, we had 2 pending complaints that are left over from December internally here, and Internal Affairs has one of those as a new complaint. So if you remember from last time we were talking about, we had 2 complaints that came into the PCOB office right around the holidays, and we were starting to collect information from those individuals. But we shared that and talked to them about working with Internal Affairs as well. And so that just took a little bit longer. And so that case, at least one of them, got started as an Internal Affairs investigation in the month of January. And then also Internal Affairs closed out 2 cases as well, one of which was one that we had looked at as well. And so that kind of finalized 2024, and we're just collecting that case data for all of 2024, and that'll be in that 2024 annual report. So we were in one officer interview this month, just one case, and it was one officer interview that we observed, both Director Gonzalez and myself. And again, just month to month, a lot of times what is happening with investigations is facilitating that open discussion, collection of evidence from complainants, talking them through the process of working with Internal Affairs, and assisting them in seeking the answers that they're trying to get. So from month to month, that's a lot of what Director Gonzalez and I are involved in. There were also a couple policies that were looked at this month. We talked last time about the limited English proficiency policy of the police department. So there's a number of things that were found, and working with the Office of Human Rights submitted some recommendations and questions about the policy to the command staff over at the police department. So awaiting some responses about some of those questions from that policy. But Director Gonzalez and I also sat down with some of the professional standards guys, and we're looking through policies that they are drafting about early intervention. That is something that their product Axon can do, but is not currently implemented. And so they're working to develop an early intervention policy that works well for officers, for the community, for oversight purposes. An early intervention is just a methodology used to address any concerns that are seen with officers before it reaches beyond a point of not being able to address. So it's about catching things early and being able to put in place training, guidance, as well as discipline at times. But that early warning intervention system is a piece of that, and having a robust policy is important. So we've been having that conversation, and there's some relationship to the use of force policy and how the PCOB can be part of that funnel that reviews use of force incidents in the department. And so those were some of the policy discussions. And then Lastly, pending allegations. So again, just looking at what allegations are in the pending investigations that are up here. And it's just unbecoming conduct. There are 2 allegations of unbecoming conduct. So there weren't any others related to this pending investigation up there. And all of these, again, these allegations relate to some specific policy in the general orders of the police department. All right. And then continuing with the closed cases, there were only unfounded as well as 1 service-related inquiry. So the allegations from the prior time that were pending were an accident related to a police vehicle and a conformance to laws. And so both of those as a closed case were unfounded. You can see that there. We'll always report those. And then you guys touched on the flock ALPR legislation up in the state, so related to the license plate readers. We did a lot this month related to a lot in January related to the flock system here. So we actually met twice with the professional standards group and some of the technology individuals, and we're just looking through the flock system, how it makes sense when we as a PCOB audit it, and what types of data we can collect from that flock system. So just as an example, I put up, these were the searches done by officers in the police department in 2025. So you can see every time an officer does a search for a plate, they have to give a reason. And usually it is related to a specific case or a specific event that occurred. So sometimes they're searching multiple times. So these searches might be related to the same event, but they're just searching for the same car in multiple places or at multiple times, or for multiple vehicles from the same incident. And so you can see there's a lot of stolen vehicle, hit and run. There were a lot related to a homicide. And then as you go down the list, some shootings, wanted persons. So you can get a sense of what the system is being used for by officers who are searching for plates in the system. And so as we continue this work, we'll start to produce an actual audit or report about Flock itself. And so we'll have an outcome there where we can be able to track the progress and what data is being collected by that system over time. Paul's, you have a question?
Yeah, I just would be interested to know if there is any information about to what extent these searches resulted in arrests, successful encounters, whatever. Is that not available at this point?
Yeah, so that's a good point, and that is something that is attempting to be collected in the system. So there is a part of the system that has an outcomes, and where documentation of what happened related to a search or a hit on a hot list is meant to be documented. So we're working with the department to make sure that the policy clearly aligns to when does an officer need to put in an outcome, what constitutes us just trying to find something, hunt it down, because these are just searches. These don't necessarily mean something was located. That's a separate item that's called hits. I just wanted to show you this as an example. This is the kind of data that we'll be able to produce inside of those types of reports. And so you'll be able, like you said, Mr. Mendez, to break that down. Like, here's how many plates were scanned. Here's how many searches were conducted. Here's how many actual hits. And what were those hits against? Were they against a national registry? Were they against something local that we were looking for? And then finally, all the way down to the depth of, here's what the results were of that. There was an arrest, or there was a, stolen vehicle recovered. So that's the goal, is to break it all the way down to those various steps, and then make sure that the system's being used according to the policy at each level of those. When an officer's putting an item on a hot list, are they doing it in accordance with the policy? When they're doing a search, are they following policy? So that's the goal.
Thank you.
Yep. And then lastly, just on the last page here, we have some of the other things that we were working on in January. We held there was a training with the city about the continuity of operations. We have some overlap, PCOB. It depends on the incident and the emergency and the crisis situation. There could be some events where PCOB, as board members and everything, would want to be involved on a more of an emergency basis where our continuity of operations would be important related to some sort of public safety situation. So we're part of that planning process. I know in January, Director Gonzalez was part of an advanced internal affairs training course. I'm doing a course myself this month related to the initial version of this, like the basic internal affairs investigation. So this is the second level of that. This is actually a 4 day, it's 1 day a month. And so it's quite a bit. It's like, 24 hours of training content. There's a test, there's discussion posts. So it's a full kind of course. And just looking at best practices in internal affairs investigations. We also met, I joined as well as Director Gonzalez has been on committees with NACOL. So NACOL is the National Association of Civilian Oversight and Law Enforcement. Many of you know that. We get a lot of training and policy from them, but it's also a way to connect with other oversight entities across the country. And so both of us sit on a different subcommittee. So I joined the membership committee, and Director Gonzalez is on the standards, education, and training committee. So we actually are meeting with other, oversight staff members in various government levels throughout the country ourselves, giving input. And that just gives us a good direct line into a national organization. And then lastly, the police department held a town hall in January, and I believe our new chair, Mr. Pola, attended, as well as Director Gonzalez. Were there and just listening to the community communicate with the chief answering questions, and continuing to be part of events like that is important. So that's just the month of January. Please let me know if you have any questions before I move over to that annual. Yep.
Yeah, I just, when so it was 23 and maybe the early part of 24, there was a fairly active effort to put together a Virginia VACOL, or an organization of police oversight organizations. Is that still alive and ongoing? I haven't heard anything, in a while.
So during our last committee meeting, there was mention of us getting, actually, it looks like NACOL is trying to get the regional organizations back on track, and they're actually exploring the possibility of engaging in a regional conference. So that would include the people from VACOL. I don't believe, however, that they approved VACOL using the name VACOL. I think they're going to have to go a different route. But that's essentially where we are as far as that's concerned.
All right. So I know I don't want to take a whole lot of time. I'll keep things moving, but I did want to show that finally we have a completed 2023 annual report. So something that the ordinance states is, and let me flip over to it so I can get it open here. Now, I tried getting it attached with the other board agenda items, but it didn't seem like it wanted to attach. It did. So you might see it in there where the other minutes and everything are as well, the agenda and all that. But I'll also put it on the PCOB website, and I'll email it out to the board as well as some other people. So just so it can start to get disseminated and posted publicly. But this was kind of a very long effort that I mentioned for a few months in a row. And it's certainly not to the point where it's certainly not a point of perfection, but the goal is to use it as a guide to help us move towards a 2024 annual report, 2025, and keep just refining that process. What are the types of things that we as a board and an office want to report on each year? What could come off of this? What could be added? Those are the types of things that when you have a chance to sit down and look over it, to think about. And so I just wanted to just give you a quick overview of it and just refer to a few things, and then I'll make sure that it's in your inboxes so you can review and provide feedback and commentary. But I do want to emphasize, if you do notice like spelling or grammar issues or something like that, we've both read it numerous times. So, but it's a long report, so if you find something, let us know. But if it comes to the content and what feedback you have and the ideas you have as a board, we want to direct that into that 2024 annual, because that's what we're really starting on right now to have done by April. And so thoughts and feedback and commentary can really go into shaping that 2024 report. Starts off with a letter from the chair. So at the time, Chair Mendez was provided this for 2023. And so you can take a look at that. The table of contents can give you kind of the breakdown. There's the summaries and introduction. It goes through the board members and provides a bio of the board members, as well as a summary of the meetings for all of 2023. So one of the things that I think is important to do is take each of those meetings and just summarize what occurred in that meeting, what were the decisions the board was making, who shared in that meeting, what was shared about. And that just kind of tracks the board's progress throughout the year. And the community input that we get in various meetings. So the next section, staff operations, this really is more about what was happening in the office, the budget, things that were, the new office space that was established at the beginning of 2023, hiring of the executive director, things like that. So the staff operations, the oversight activity, this is the biggest section related to the complaints and other investigative monitoring and oversight that occurred during the year. Policy and procedure, a lot in 2023, there were 3 different main policies that the board looked at and provided feedback on and commentary on. So anytime that the board or the executive director touched policy and procedure and made recommendations or changes, that's talked about in that section. And then we have professional development and community engagement. There are many times throughout the year where we as staff or board members are engaged in these items, both of them. And so just documenting those successes and the times that we're building our own skills, as well as reaching out to the community and working with the community. And then finally, as which is always going to be true, is a challenges and opportunities section. So a section that kind of discusses some of those core challenges of the board and the legislation, the ordinance, things like that in that challenges section. These, we tried to be specific to 2023. I know we're writing this retroactively, but tried to make sure that we left some space for 2024 to be able to share kind of how that's evolved. I won't read, there's a summary from Director Gonzalez in here as well. And I won't read this, but you can see that the report is kind of heavy in a written text way. And maybe that's something we can reshape for 2024. I would like to definitely include a lot more data, but one of the highlights of the introduction is the history of the board. I tried to capture what was happening throughout the kind of the different segments of the timeline. And so just a quick breakdown of where the board was from a city council perspective, from a legislative perspective, and from a just when an executive director was hired and lost and gained again. So this just lays out, it's been quite a few years of the board trying to find its footing, and you can see why. There's been a lot of change. Some of the achievements. Again, here are the section on the profiles of the board members. So you have all the board members shown and profiled there, and that's something that we'll definitely do for 2024 as well, so that the new group of whoever's new to the board is included. And then, like I had mentioned here, these are kind of summaries of the board meetings that occurred throughout the year. And then there is a record of attendance. And this is something that, like, one of the things to think about with an annual report is the goal is to keep trend over time. So, thinking about board attendance and board membership over time is going to be a part of the key story that explains, when the board is or is not more active throughout over the years, and just documenting that. I had mentioned the staff operations section talks a lot about the hiring of a new chief of police that started in 2023. Director Gonzalez coming in 2023. Different systems and improvements to the process and the way of doing things. A layout of the budget from 2023 is here as well. It's just a very generic high level. I do hope in the future to break that down a little more. And then the oversight activity section, again, a lot of talk about how oversight's done, how we monitor the budget of the police department. There is a section on breaking down how the budget has changed over the past 3 years in the police department. I do hope to do actually more on this in the future, just breaking down how the police department budget is structured and is being used and changing over time. And that allows prompting of questions and thoughts and considerations. So you can see that in here. Infrastructure and fuel, flexible staffing, that's like overtime and bonuses and things like that. So just tracking that change. Core operations, you can see there's quite a big spike. And again, there's many legitimate reasons that explain these things, but it just opens the conversation for why is the department spending money on this versus this, or what has changed in their staffing over the past couple of years, and allows that dialogue. Also in here lists all the cases, all the external complaint cases from the Internal Affairs Office, and breaks those down, how they were found, the allegations with them. I do hope in the future to really start to show some trends, as well as breakdown of kind of what we're seeing in complaints. And so 2024 hopes to expound upon the complaint data and actually show a little bit, dive deeper into that. And then these are complaints that came into our office and just how those were handled. So again, 2023 was a very transitional year we didn't have an executive director for part of the year, loss of access to records for part of the year. So 2023 was interesting, but there is a discussion of complaints and items that came in directly to PCOB here as well, and kind of what happened with those. Lastly, I mentioned the policy section. There's definitely no need to focus here because it's all heavy in text, other than to say then it talks about the hearing examiner desk book, some of the draft work that went into that, internal affairs and format, access sharing, bias-based policing, professional traffic stops. So it really documents the recommendations and the work of the board in all these areas, and the executive director in these areas. And then there was some flock safety discussion as well in 2023. There's going to be a big section on flock in 2024 as well, obviously. So the policy section, very dry. Professional development just really lays out what all we as a board or staff were involved in throughout the year: leadership trainings, administrative trainings, oversight, conferences. There's actually quite a lot. And then these are the various trainings presented to the board. So members from CPD or other departments or outside agencies who came and presented to the board, those presentations and trainings are documented here as well. Again, similar community engagement lays out all the various community engagement activities and events, as well as the public comments that were provided during our board meetings. So we're trying to just capture and be transparent. If someone spoke tonight, it would be captured in a 2025 report about what they spoke about tonight, right? So the goal is people's voices are going to be documented and heard. We're not, everything's open. And just reporting on what the board's work is and what's happening. There's also a list of all the news articles, kind of the main ones from the main Charlottesville outlets. So there's a list of about 12 here of various articles related to the board. And you can see in the news kind of what was happening throughout that year. And then lastly, that challenges and opportunities section. So again, very text heavy, but it talks about some of the policy and procedural challenges of the board, budget and staffing challenges, as well as the limitation of access to records during 2023. And so again, it's kind of a very long report, but the information's there and it creates a baseline for us to build upon, to start showing trends, to start documenting how the board's progress is over time. There's an appendix section that just has some documents in it for reference, but that is the quick overview of the annual report, and I'll be able to send that out and post that publicly tomorrow. So I'll pause there.
James, question? Can you hear me?
But
First of all, beautiful job, well done. And will council get a copy, please?
Yeah, so we're gonna make sure that the board sees it as well as the city manager's office and things like that. We're not trying to like hide it, but we'll make sure it gets up to the city council as well, because it's kind of like let's do this soft release, make sure it's available and accessible, and then make sure we highlight it when we're ready.
I just want council to see all that's been going on since there's been grumbling that we aren't doing anything. So, thank you.
Inez, did you want to?
any other questions for Mr. Walker? All right, thank you, James. Great job.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to reading it,
Impressive.
believe it or not. Okay, moving on is the next item of business tonight is the executive director's report. I turn this over to Director Gonzalez.
So good evening, everyone. I think that was a perfect segue into asking all of you for your bios again and your headshots. We don't want to wait as long as we did last time to get them. The report, again, is on track to be completed on time and submitted to the city council as required through our ordinance. So yeah, we would love some updated pictures and bios from everyone. And also, Mr. Mendez, we're going to need another letter from the chair because you were the chair during that time frame. So yeah, one more time, Mr. Mendez. So as you all know, that some of you are currently on the board on holdover positions because the city council was in the process of engaging in interviews of new board members for the PCOB. It's my understanding out of the applicants that they had, they narrowed it down to 6 that were scheduled to be interviewed in groups of 3. One group on the 3rd of this month, the other on the 18th. And it's my understanding now that the new board members will take effect the day after they're appointed by the council. I'm hoping that's going to be on the 18th. I honestly don't know. But we're hopeful that we're going to get at least 2 new board members and possibly the reinstatement of the 2 existing board members that reapplied for their positions. But again, we don't know exactly where the city council is going to land on that. As the chair knows, because he participated, the International Visitor Leadership Program was, as far as we were concerned, a very huge success. And what that involved was law enforcement leaders from other countries, from 5 Middle Eastern countries, sat with us for half a day for the morning, where we essentially exchange ideas concerning oversight. The concept of police oversight is something that does not exist in the Middle Eastern countries, and they were exploring essentially how to implement this in their own countries and wanted to know how it works here. And so it was, I think we learned just as much from them as they did from us, but it was, I thought, a really pretty interesting and I think fruitful interaction. Mr. Mendez?
No, sorry.
Madam Director, of the 6, does that include the 2 of us that were pending or on hold?
So it's 6 interviews, not including you and Mr. Mendez.
I'm sorry, say again?
Not including you.
Not including, okay.
Not including you and Mr. Mendez, it's 6 additional interviews.
Thank you.
And it's my understanding that both you and Mr. Mendez had already been interviewed?
They didn't require us to be interviewed again.
Again, because you had been interviewed previously.
Yeah.
Right. And then other than that, I recently found out from the clerk of council's office that we are supposed to have a policy in place if we want to have virtual meetings. And so I actually created a policy based on the state legislation concerning electronic meetings that I submitted as part of the package that you all have access to through the portal. Did anyone not get that? Outstanding. Did you all have a chance to read the policy?
I know I did.
I haven't had a chance to read the policy.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, because the goal is
No.
Or if you agree with the policy, that the sooner you all vote it in as our official policy, then we will be allowed to have all virtual meetings. Until that time happens, you will not be allowed to engage in all virtual meetings.
Could you put that up on the screen? So if we feel like taking a vote, we will know exactly what we're, sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh, have it
step on your foot.
It's okay. It's all right.
So in other words, she's saying that if you have not read the policy, you can't attend the meetings.
Well, no, the issue is that there is no policy. We didn't have a policy in place
Right.
to do the virtual meetings. I know virtual meetings were happening, but so we're required to have a policy in place. So this policy was taken from an existing policy that essentially lays out how we can have virtual meetings. And there's some things, that we have to go through, for instance, making sure that everyone has notice that this meeting was going to be virtual. Civilians can sign in, that they've got the technology available so that they can do that. But I believe it also addresses an issue of what happens if we have board members who cannot attend. So it addresses any issues, like if we have a board member who consistently is absent, then they're in violation of a specific policy in place, right? We don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but if you say that and then
It happened,
right.
and then, yeah,
Right.
okay.
So we're limited to 2 all virtual meetings a year.
Mhm.
Correct.
And what are the remote attendance limits?
So if you have, for example, if you, let's say an illness or some kind of disability, then we can accommodate for that. We just, the chair just needs to be made aware of it so that we can document it accordingly. We have been in compliance with pretty much everything except for the documenting of the reasons why members are not showing up in person. Also, if you are a primary caregiver for an individual that's disabled, then that's also something that we would consider, that we would make an accommodation for. And then there are 2, I believe, personal. So if, for example, one of the board members is out today, the rational reason that she gave was for personal reasons, and so that would be something we document, but that's like 25% of the overall meetings would be the percentage that individual would be allowed for just solely personal reasons. But we are in compliance pretty much with everything else that's included in this policy.
I have a question on that. Suppose you out of town or something, and it was one of them, when you out of town, it's one of them weeks that we have a board meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually, so Inez, can you scroll to the reasons for absence?
For individuals.
There you go. So for instance, Cameron emailed and said that she was going to be out of town. She gave a reason for it. It was a personal reason. So I think the issue is, the personal matters limited to 2 meetings, 25%, as Inez said. But really, the issue is just about letting either me know or Inez know, hey, I can't be there, and here's why. So it's not so much, I think, to like if somebody misses a 3rd meeting, it's a personal matter. We don't jump on them and say, well, you can't be on the board now. It's more about, we let them know, you realize you've exceeded it. Why are you exceeding it? Try to work with that person to see if maybe there's some other issue they fall under a different category. I hadn't really thought about that.
I understand. That's understandable. I'm just, that was one of my things there, because, this, a lot of times with spring of the year coming, people doing a lot of traveling.
Right.
Just that, I guess, hey, I will be out of town that week. I won't be able to attend that meeting. So I guess up to you and Inez, make your decision on.
Well, you'd let us know. We just say, okay.
Okay.
Right? Because it would fall under that. Now, again, if you look at this, it also allows you to say, hey, I'm going to be out of town. I just want to let you know I'm going to attend remotely. So it gives you the option of attending remotely,
okay.
right? It doesn't mean that we can't say, well, you can't attend and you can't vote or you can't do any of these things.
Okay, understandable.
And for clarification, it's the chair that makes any decisions concerning if there's non-compliance with the policy, what he and the board will decide to do in terms of, keeping that person in check. I have nothing to do with that. My sole function is to document. Anything disciplinary in scope or accountability in scope is outside of the scope of what my duties are. But to your, I think, point, Mr. Dillard, there is also a certain level of commitment. So if you have an individual that knows that they travel frequently, that's something you should consider before accepting a position on the board.
Still like sound like you, still like you still trying to get rid of me, right?
Nope. No, surgery.
The silence is deafening.
It got real quiet, right? Yeah.
Surgery is a damn good reason.
Yeah.
Legitimate.
Oh, no, Mr. Dillard was covered. Like I said, he stayed in touch with us constantly, but I'm just saying in general, for anybody that comes on the board in the future, we're going to have to start taking this obviously very seriously. We are starting to find out non-compliance related issues as I go along. The more I search through our documents, the more I find. And so we have to address it. But again, like I said, this has nothing to do with you, Mr. Dillard. But having said that, if you're going to be traveling a whole lot more, that's a whole other story.
If you want, George, we could call this the George Dillard ordinance.
You go.
Any other questions about this?
Well, I move that we accept this policy as presented by the executive director.
Second.
There's been a motion to accept the policy as presented, and second, any further discussion? Okay, then we'll go down the roll to do the votes. I vote aye.
I vote aye.
Aye for me.
Aye.
Aye.
Cameron.
And Ms. McBride is absent tonight.
Absent, yeah, but that's fine.
All right, so policies in place. Thank you, everybody. Anything else, Ms. Gonzalez?
The very last thing, and again, talk about it ever so briefly, is that everyone knows that we're in the process of attempting to amend the bylaws. What we have begun to do, yourself, myself, and Mr. Mendez, is that we're comparing the operating procedures along with the ordinance in order to address inconsistencies in advance. We've been finding things obviously in the ops procedure that should have been included in the ordinance that were not originally, and we intend to propose that they are, and there's certain items within the ops procedure that we're looking to eliminate just to kind of like streamline the process. And that's where we are. We've met once on the subject already. We've gone through the first section of the both the ordinance and the operating procedures, and it's only inclement weather and illness that has prevented us from meeting again. But now hopefully things are going to be looking up and we'll be meeting again, hopefully maybe next week.
And just so everybody knows, it's a very laborious process. But not only because of the documents, the volume of the documents, but also because we're trying to be very careful as we go through to make sure that we don't have to go through it again and repeat this procedure in another year or two. So the hope is that as we finish this, then we can present it to City Council for their review and approval, and that will go through the process we've discussed before, where it goes to City Attorney and the City Manager. They'll review it. They'll either stamp it as approved on their part, goes to council, or they'll mark the areas that they have disagreements with, and then council will look at both and they can decide what they want to do. Okay. Anything further?
Thank you.
All right.
My pleasure.
Move on to the that's the last item of business, which is an opportunity for anyone in the public to ask a question or make a comment. That's open to people that are here as well as to anybody online. Do we have anybody online first? No one online, okay. Floor is open to anybody here if anybody wants a question or comment. No questions or comments.
Now that was all your piece.
And we'll close that, and That being said, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
So adjourned, it is adjourned at 7:15 PM.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.